Welcome back, brilliant minds, and let's continue with the questions. Right, so we had looked at 4.1 and 4.2. Now we move into 4.3, which then says draw a graph of G indicating any intercept with the axis and the asymptotes. So we need to make sure that our graph shows the intercept with the axis, so the x and y intercept, as well as the asymptotes. Okay, so what do we have already? So 4.3, we do have our asymptotes, which is y is equals to 2 and x is equals to 1, if you remember from 4.1. Then we have our coordinates. We do have the x-intercept, which is half and 0. Then we have the y-intercept, which we calculated above, and that should be 0 and 1. Okay, now it is important for us to know which quadrant our graph will be drawn at. So we have 1 into x minus 1 divided by x minus 1 plus 2. Okay, so given that our a is equals to 1, which is a positive value, it is greater than 0. We know that our quadrant, our function will occupy the first and the second quadrant. So with the hyperbola, we have two arms when we draw the graph. So our first arm will be in the first quadrant, and then we'll have the second arm in the third quadrant. Meaning the third quadrant there. Okay, so this is what we expect our graph to look like. This is important to keep in mind so that it directs you when you draw your graph. Right, so let's draw the graph that we asked to sketch. We first start with our axis. So this is your y-axis. Then you draw your x-axis. Okay. Then let's look at the asymptotes. Our first asymptote, it is y is equals to 2. So if this is 0, this is 1, this is 2 there. Let's make this 1. Our dotted line will be at y is equals to 2. And it's quite important that you also name these lines. So you do write y is equals to 2 there. Makes it easy for your marker. Then we've got 1, we've got 2, we've got 3 there. 2, 3. Our second asymptote, it is x is equals to 1. That will be the vertical asymptote right there. X is equals to 1. Perfect. So we have drawn our vertical and horizontal asymptote. Now it's time to also plot the intercept. Our first intercept, half and 0. So half and 0, it is here. Okay, because there is an x-intercept. Then our second intercept is 0 and 1, which is our y-intercept. And that is just there. Maybe let me use a different color so we clearly see them. At 1 and at half. Okay, cool. So the asymptote can also be used as a direction of sort of a new Cartesian plane, right? So in other words, this will then be our new first quadrant, and this is sort of our new third quadrant. So I expect my arms to occupy the first and the third quadrant. We see the two coordinates there that already show us the shape that our arm in the third quadrant will take, right? We say that an asymptote is a line that the graph approaches but never touches. So it approaches it but never touches, and it goes through those points up until. This is our first arm, but the hyperbola has two arms. So we draw our second arm. Let me just further extend this asymptote. Our second arm is then in the what? In the first quadrant. Because we do know that our second arm will be in the first quadrant, we can simply sketch that without the need of having AD coordinates. Okay, I'm sorry, could have just made that blue as well so there's no confusions. This is our second arm. Okay, so this is the sketch of our graph with both the x and the y-intercept showing, as well as the asymptote. Because A is positive, our graph is in the first and third quadrant. Okay. Now, moving on to 4.4. 4.4 says determine the value or values of x where g of x is greater than 0. Where g of x is greater than 0, in other words, where the graph is a positive. Okay. I'm just going to write 4.4 here because we do need the graph to find 4.4, where g of x is greater than 0. So we know that g of x speaks to the y values. So this is the same as saying where y is greater than 0. Where is y greater than 0? Y is greater than 0 above the x-axis. So anything from here, this is when our y is a positive, greater than 0. Now, we're looking for the values of x where the graph is above the x-axis. Once the graph is below the x-axis, that is not our point of interest. Okay, so now, looking at our graph, I'm just going to use this green one to highlight those areas. So maybe let me choose yellow. Okay, now looking at our graph, we are saying at this portion, the graph is indeed above the x-axis. So it is positive. Up to that point, up to the intercept of x, where now it starts being a negative. So I'm going to use just the black one where we show where it starts being a negative. So this is not our point of interest. So we're saying this graph is positive from infinity, from negative infinity, x, up until at the intercept. So at the intercept, our x is a half there. Because after a half, it then continues being negative from a half until the asymptote point. Now, after the asymptote, if you check, our graph then is above the x-axis for all the x values. So now, this is when x is between negative infinity and half, and we have a second interval as well, when your x is greater than 1. For all the values after x is greater than 1, the second arm there is above the x-axis, so it is indeed positive. Okay, let's also catch up on the last video to then continue with the rest of the questions. Thank you.